From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Several years ago, an Afghan man who helped the U.S. military fight the Taliban fled Afghanistan with his family and resettled in Colorado. Mohammad Ali Dadfar had escaped with his wife and their 4 children after U.S. forces withdrew from Afghanistan in 2021. The Dadfar family made their way to the U.S. and resettled in Boulder County. Since then, Dadfar has held several jobs, including most recently working as a licensed long-haul truck driver. Dadfar was driving through Indiana on October 10th when he was stopped and taken into custody by masked ICE agents at a truck stop. ICE has not charged him with a crime, yet he's been held in an ICE detention center for a month now. Colorado Sun reporter Jennifer Brown wrote about Dadfar's case and what it reveals about how ICE operates. She joined me to talk about what happened.
So Ali, as his wife and friends call him, he worked for the Afghan army for 14 or 15 years, his wife told me. He was working basically in security, and when the U.S. troops were in Afghanistan, he would travel with them as they went, province to province throughout Afghanistan, trying to hold back the Taliban, helped keep them safe, and worked with them for several years.
And just to be clear, staying in Afghanistan was not an option for him because he helped our military.
Correct. It was well known that he had worked with the U.S. government and that he had fought the Taliban. They decided they had to get out of the country or they might be murdered.
And he and his family did flee the country in 2021, but it was a harrowing 3-year journey to get to the United States. Just briefly, what did they go through to get here to Colorado?
Well, like many of those refugees who were fleeing Afghanistan, the first thing they did was cross over the mountains and walk for 15 days through Pakistan. They made it to Iran. They lived in Iran for about a year, but it was very hard there for them. They said that Afghan refugees were not treated well in Iran. So they heard about the Brazilian government offering visas at the time for Afghan refugees. So they went there for over a year and made that journey from South America up through the Darien Gap, a dangerous jungle. They saw dead bodies and dangerous snakes, and their youngest daughter almost drowned in a river, and eventually made it to the U.S. border where they asked for asylum.
And after they settled in Colorado in the Louisville, Lafayette area, what was life like for the family?
There's a really active group up there who's been helping resettle Afghan refugees since the Taliban regained control. So that community really lifted them up, helped them find an apartment, helped them financially for a few months. Ali worked in insulation construction at first and then decided to become a long-haul truck driver and get his commercial driver's license so that he could transition to that better-paying job.
Dadfar was arrested in Indiana during a big ICE operation in the Midwest that targeted truck drivers. Briefly, Jennifer, what do we know about how and where he was stopped on the day that he was arrested?
Well, according to his wife, he was driving near the Indiana-Illinois border and had to stop in a weigh station, as is required by truck drivers. And he noticed that there were some masked agents, outside. Apparently it was a sting jointly from ICE and the Indiana State Police. He was talking on the phone to his brother at the time, and he saw these agents kind of waving for him to pull over to a different area of this parking lot. He hung up the phone, pulled over, and was asked to basically strip shirts beside the road, handcuffed.
Oh my God.
And the family didn't hear from him until the next day when he was locked in a detention facility.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said in a news release that they were targeting truck drivers in this operation whose licenses had been issued by, quote, sanctuary states. Presumably that includes Colorado. We mentioned that Dadfar hasn't been charged with a crime. What hints does his family have about why he's in custody?
Right. He has not been charged with a crime. I, of course, reached out to ICE. They said it would take them a couple days to look up his particular case.
Mhm.
I did speak to his attorney. He, again, said there's no crime. He was actually granted what they call humanitarian parole, which is for people who are, escaping dangerous situations, which Afghanistan would qualify for.
Certainly.
What's happened in this new administration, the Trump administration, is some of these previous immigration policies that people were operating under have now just been abandoned. They would consider, a sanctuary state that would give CDL licenses to people who are not citizens. And in Ali's case, someone who is following the legal requirements to get asylum but hasn't achieved it yet. So
Mm.
basically, it sounds like his humanitarian parole was just ignored.
You spoke with several people who work with Afghan immigrants who have resettled in Boulder County. What has been their reaction to Ali's arrest?
Yes, like I said, there's quite a contingent of Afghan people who moved to the Boulder County area, Lafayette, Louisville, Boulder, since 2021 when the country fell back into the hands of the Taliban. There's one woman I spoke to who set up sort of a resettlement organization. She herself hosted 2 families. Her organization helped 12 families relocate up there. And she was outraged when she heard that this man was taken by ICE and pointed out the bitter irony, I guess, of someone who helped out the U.S. government when he was needed, but now is caught up by the U.S. government in our immigration policies and is actually, sitting in a jail for the past 28 days. She actually compared the ICE agents to the Taliban when I interviewed her.
You wrote that Ali Dadfar talks to his family by phone from the detention center, but hasn't told his kids about the arrest. How is the family coping with all of this?
It was really quite an experience to interview his wife. She was very solid and stoic in, telling these stories. But when she talked about how much her kids missed their dad and needed them, I mean, her kids are 4, 7, 9, and 11.
Mm.
And so the dad is able to call from the detention center once a day. And if his kids are there, he does talk to them. But he tells especially the youngest ones that he's out driving, he's doing his job as a truck driver. I think the kids have just been through so much, especially on that journey through South America. They were starving and, as I mentioned, like they saw actual dead bodies and nearly drowned in a river. They're finally getting settled and starting their new lives here in Colorado. And I think it's just too traumatizing to then say, now your dad has been locked up.
Jennifer Brown is a reporter for the Colorado Sun. She mentioned she's spoken with Dadfar's attorney, who told her it's not clear when he might be granted a court date. We'll include a link to her story in our show notes and at kunc.org. That's it today for In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thanks so much for listening.